was really nice today that you spoke during a conference. It's not such an often experience. So, could you please share what your opinion about this conference and everything?
Okay, I was participating at the IMGL Masterclass, which is the class which is held by the organization International Master of the Gambling Law, which I'm happen to be a member for, I don't know, 3 years already. It was actually my first experience to participating on the panel hosted by the IMGL. So I was quite nervous at the beginning because I was speaking together with one of those most recognized experts within the gambling law. But I hope that it turned out pretty nice and that the audience was happy because we were discussing a very interesting topic which could be helpful it should be in the wide interest of all the operators and also the software providers and basically everyone involved in the gambling in the European Union.
Could you please elaborate more? What did you discuss and what were your conclusions finally?
Okay, we were discussing the enforcement against the illegal operators within the European Union, and I was participating in the panel with two writers or creators of the report which has been written for the European Commission, which has been evaluating the enforcement against those illegal operators. And so we were basically discussing the conclusions of the report and also from the practical point of view. So it was those two creators, both of them were lawyers, one professor of the university, she was also participating in the report, and then me as the representative of the software providers. So I was speaking about how the enforcement authorities can actually use the approach to software providers in order to enforce the procedures against the illegal operators of the gambling.
To your opinion, who is under more pressure? Providers, operators?
Well, under pressure is the industry because, of course, the illegal operators is the unwanted feature in our industry. However, the problem is that sometimes only it's the regulators who pushes the black market because sometimes those regulations are set in a way that is basically impossible to comply and impossible to get the legal approval necessary in order to operate in a given market. Therefore, some of those operators doesn't have any other choice than do it unauthorizedly. And then we as the software providers, we are the easy target. So it is, of course, very strong and very powerful tool to enforce the process against illegal operators to the software providers because every single operator is relying on the third-party solution. But with this great power comes great responsibility, and I'm afraid that to this day, many of those regulators are not able to carry such a responsibility.
So what is the main obstacle towards the transparent, perfect legislation in gambling?
It's various and it depends on each member state. And we are talking about the European Union, so basically it means that we are working with some international environment. And the only way how to achieve some harmonized market which will be actually effective for the operators within the whole EU is the cooperation between the regulators, which often doesn't even exist. And the reason for why it doesn't even exist is also the difference between the various regulatory bodies. Some countries like, for example, Malta or UK, they're having their independent agency. But in comparing to other non-market jurisdictions where they have it's regulated by the Ministry of Finance, for example, as we do have in Czech Republic, and also the member of the staff or the number of the staff is very different. Like in the UK, they do have about 400 employees of the UK Gambling Commission, whether in, for example, Estonia is 1.5 people who are actually serving in their Ministry of Finance, which is the regulatory body for the operators. So it is very challenging and it's very hard to have some legal enforcement in so different market as the European Union is. Basically, every time when the international background is involved, it's very complicated and challenging.
You recently have visited Zurich, and you had special session on legislation. If you would compare the results and the atmosphere and everything, what had more results?
Well, it's very hard to say because at the end of the day we were discussing the very similar subject. The panel I was moderating in Zurich was about responsible gambling, and if you think about it, it's very similar to the enforcement against the illegal operators, because the best case scenario, there wouldn't be any illegal operators. We will all be living in the nice, harmonized market where every single, player will have a chance to participate on the gambling provided by well-licensed operator who will pay its contribution to the market in form of the taxes. So the player will benefit, the operator will benefit, the state will benefit. It's the win-win-win, and I believe that the responsible gambling is the way how we can actually achieve this and solve this challenge, because what we actually need is the change of what gambling means in the eyes of the wide public. And if they will realize that what we are trying to do is just entertainment, it will be easier for the politicians who are actually adopting those rules and regulations to justify their approach to the gambling and make it more reasonable and more regulated as any other industry.
And the last question, is society ready for responsible gambling, to your opinion?
Of course.
Are you sure? Media, society, cases that you have heard. You're a lawyer, come on, tell us the truth.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, at this time, it will be political suicide to go ahead and publicly say, okay, let's open the boundaries for the gambling, because the media will misuse it. The wide public will went crazy about it. So it won't work nowadays. But this is what we should, as an industry, do. We should work on it, and we should perhaps show to everyone that what we are trying to do with especially online gambling is we are trying to entertain people. We are not trying to let the minors to play. We are not trying to promote the gambling to pathological gamblers. We don't want to target them. We don't want them to be our key customers, etc., etc. So after all of that, which will be achieved by the industry, which I believe is being in progress, after that we can say that. So wish us a luck on the way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Yes, my name is Joerg Hofmann. I'm a gaming lawyer from Germany, and I'm also a past president of the IMGL, which stands for International Masters of Gaming Law. And IMGL conducted 3 conference sessions here, the IMGL Master Classes. Just over now, I'm happy to report a little bit about it. The first one dealt with the new regulation in the Netherlands, and of course with the cooling off period, something everybody was interested in and something we discussed on a broader basis, even on a cross-border basis. Then we followed up with a panel about advertising. We learned that there are tightening restrictions in various jurisdictions across Europe. The discussion is the same in the Netherlands. We learned that the discussion is forwarded in Sweden. And then we had, of course, experts from Italy reporting on the total internet advertising ban. And finally, a very interesting session covered the enforcement of online gaming regulation across the European Union. We have an evaluation instructed by the EU Commission, provided by some scientists, and 2 of the authors of the report were present on our panel. And we discussed these 3 different and 3 main measures for online gaming enforcement in Europe. And the result was, it works here and there, but definitely it's better to enhance the regulation and make enforcement unnecessary, because the industry and the market can bypass everything almost. And if you compare jurisdictions across each other, you will learn that a proper balanced regulation is the best way to reach every goal and to protect the players. So we were very happy with the audience, with these discussions, and it was a pleasure being here at the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask you a few more questions?
Sure.
What, to your opinion, which legislation of which countries are better and which are worse? So
You mean
what could be
regulation?
our example? Yeah, for example, to follow.
Well, it depends on the politics of these countries. It always comes to my mind to mention the Danish model, of course, because Danish is covering all sectors of the gaming industry. It's open-minded, it's not too much restricted, so it's industry-friendly in a way that allows to protect players and to make the industry compatible, but also following rules. I think we've also very well experienced regulation in the United Kingdom, where things are progressing in a different way. Online regulation has been drafted in 2007. It's experienced. They have a very proper licensing regime. But now you see there's also a focus on advertising, as the Advertising Standard Authority in England is also responsible for reviewing advertising activities in the market. And you see high fines being imposed. But that is one part of the medal. The other part is, of course, that the industry and the regulator understands the industry and is trying to protect buyers by allowing the industry to develop further. And then you have interesting jurisdictions even in the north, like Romania, where also the regulator is pretty much advanced in regulation. Some content of regulation is different. In Romania, you need a license as an affiliate. You don't need any affiliate license outside of Romania. It's different, but it's different approaches of regulators. If you want to have an example for one of the worst regulations, see my country and join me to come to Germany. Yes, because we are still in the period of developing. It looks like that in the course of this year there will be a new application proceeding being established for sports betting licenses, but the conditions for these licenses don't seem to be very attractive. It's still sticking with an online casino ban, and since the current regulation in Germany, which is based on an interstate treaty, will last until the end of June 2021, we have to monitor the development. The next months will bring hopefully some changes, and that is also part of the political discussions.
To your opinion, where the gambling industry is going to, the legislation of gambling industry? It goes to more transparency, I don't know, more regulation, less regulation, more freedom, less freedom?
I think, I won't say it's more freedom, but I would think it's more related to the standard goals of regulation, to protect a safe environment for players and for the stakeholders of the industry. I guess since it's always driven by politicians, and unfortunately politicians are not always the best informed driving forces when it comes to gambling regulation, we need to realize that they go beyond borders sometimes. That is part of the discussion with advertising. It's a typical political discussion to ban advertising, but you ignore that advertising also is important to inform people that your offer is licensed, that you're the good guy in the market to channelize traffic from illegal offers to licensed offers, and so far it should be something in between. But the trend is always going far beyond things that are necessary. But I think we will face more and more licensing regimes across the jurisdictions, at least in the European Union. Even Germany is on its way. It will take time. We always need a lot of time, but this is the way we're going through. It will take a long time until we can talk about gaming regulation in Europe being harmonized. For the time being, it's impossible to harmonize it, but if you could call it kind of synchronized, let's say equal, balance, and part of cooperation of regulators, then we would have made a major step forward.
What would you say about Africa and Latin America?
Well, Latin America, in particular Brazil, is a very attractive, very interesting market. It's in its first steps of regulation, and you see it attracts attention of many operators and investment firms from the US and from Europe. I know that Africa also, Nigeria in particular, is a very big market. I think that regulation in Nigeria or regulation in Africa is still behind, and for some reasons Africa is different, of course, so they need to develop, and being compliant and establishing a compliance regime is nothing you can do within a few days. It takes time and experiences, and there are do's and don'ts, and everybody has the right to make a mistake sometimes, but can correct it then.
Does industry has really good experts in law, legislation experts that can help other countries? For example, there is Belarus.
Yes.
You know, that Belarus is going to let online casinos in. They are going to open to new markets. Do you have experts who can consult, who can comment? I know they had conference.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would say the best way they could do is consult the industry expert, learn from do's and don'ts of other jurisdictions, and the gaming lawyers, those who are qualified gaming lawyers, like all our general members of the International Masters of Gaming Law, because these are long practicing legal experts in private practice. And it's an association which has members in more than 44 countries, plus 33 states and territories in the US. I think if you talk to these people and combine the industry experts as well, and also meet regulators from other jurisdictions and discuss how to establish a functioning system, this is best advice for them to do so. And of course, we can provide experts and have them being instructed to consult. These won't be Belarus lawyers, because as ever, when there's emerging jurisdictions, you won't find qualified gaming lawyers because there is no gaming law that you can practice. It is something that you learn by doing when a market is going to open up, and you are lucky enough to be one of the first lawyers in that jurisdictions to qualify and to specify this field of law. You won't find a lot of competition, because even in my jurisdictions, we have, of course, many lawyers advising the gaming industry, but those you can call gaming lawyer with international backgrounds, it's a handful of addresses in Germany you can really recommend to go to. But these are all good, and that happens in every jurisdiction that has experience in gaming.
If you would be navigation system in legislation, world legislation in gambling, which direction you would show? What would be one word where legislation of the gambling industry should go?
You mean as part of regulation, or what is the question?
As legislation in general, should we go to transparency, responsibility, responsible consumption?
I wouldn't divide it. I think transparency is most important, because transparency covers everything. Transparency covers also advertising. If a commercial is misleading and not transparent, it's the wrong way to promote the business. If the player is not informed about the way the play works and about the amount of winnings and the chances, I think it's not what we understand as being player protection. So transparency is good. Transparency is also part of compliance, and that is part of social responsibility. But it's a combination. It's a lovely cocktail you can mix, and it tastes the same always.
Let's hope for the best that this cocktail will be successful.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.